Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for March 23rd, 2021. As always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Avram Pilch, and as always, I'm joined by Raspberry Pi expert Ash Puckett and Associate Editor Les Pounder, and we've got not one, not two, but three special guests today joining us to show some really unique stuff that's going on with Pi, with regular Raspberry Pi and with Pico. First of all, we have a friend of the show, Ryder Damen, joining us. Hi, Ryder.
Hi.
Hey, Ryder's going to be showing us one of his latest really cool projects, which allows you to make a great entrance into someone's room. And we have Shri and Chris from Piper Learning, who are going to show us a brand new way of programming your Pico. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming. Shri and Chris, tell us about your company, Piper Learning, and what you guys do.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to take that. So my name is Shri Bose. I'm actually a co-founder of Piper. We are a company based out of San Francisco, and we actually create electrical engineering kits for kids to get started with building using the Raspberry Pi. So our flagship product, the thing that got us started, was actually through a Kickstarter where the maker community really rallied around us and brought us to life. And we created this product where basically kids can play Minecraft and start interacting with technology while they play. So the entire concept of bringing together kinesthetic learning through storytelling and through actual really fun gameplay that they know and are familiar with, and tying that to actual physical hardware building using breadboards and wires and buttons has been a really, really cool way to get kids engaged from a really early age. Part of the reason we're here is to talk about what we're doing with the Raspberry Pi Pico, which we're really excited about. The Pico, as you guys know, is a really powerful little microcomputer. And we are using this microcontroller to actually allow kids to use their browsers, to use a browser-based interface we've created called Piper Make, to program their Pico and to be guided through tutorials where you use little pieces of technology that we ship to you every month as a part of our monthly subscription called the Monthly Makers Club. So if you're not a part yet, go check it out. It's the coolest club to be a part of. And we basically have an interface that lets kids get started with building with lots of these tiny pieces of technology that maybe you see on the shelf and are a little bit intimidated by because you don't know coding interface. We've really given kids a cool little launch pad, a little platform to begin building and creating. And we think that kids will create the next big thing using it. And we're really excited about it. So Chris actually can show you a little bit about what the product looks like and a few of the tutorials that we've made so kids can start building.
Great, yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you, Shri.
Yeah, we're pumped about it.
Yeah, my name's Chris Bauman. So I come from the toy industry. I worked for Mattel Toys for 14 years, and specifically on the Hot Wheels brand. So I did a lot of stuff with kids, and really with Piper, we're targeting a younger age group than most of these electronic devices. So our products go all the way down to 8 years old, and we really thrive in elementary schools and middle schools and teaching computer science. And so that's really the goal that we're trying to do in following Shri's vision that she brought into Piper 5 years ago. So everybody can follow along if you go on to get another tab open and check out make.playpiper.com. And what we've created using.
Do you want to share your screen, or I can share my screen and we can see it there?
I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and share here. Here we go.
See, we got it.
All right, so here we are at make.playpiper.com. So we've created this drag and drop coding tool using Google Blockly specifically for use with the Raspberry Pi Pico. So we make a starter kit that includes the Pico and an 830 hole breadboard and resistors and buttons and lights and cable to connect to your computer. But the guts of why we love this is that it can connect to any computer to a Raspberry Pi Pico, and your computer will immediately engage with the microcontroller. So this was always really hard to do for computers like a Chromebook. And so this product is really built around Chromebooks. It thrives in the Chrome browser. It also works with Edge and Opera, but not Safari or Firefox as of yet. So Chrome friendly, and really for kids, and so many of them have Chromebooks these days. There's not a lot of things that plug into Chromebooks and work really well. And so our developers have come up with this, which does.
That's great. So what type of firmware do you need to have on the Pico for this to work?
So we've written our own firmware, which you can just go down to the bottom and just say set up my Pico. We ship them with firmware installed. Our developers have developed a custom firmware, which you can. So if you don't have our starter kit, any Pico could come in here and you just say click set up my Pico and go ahead and down the firmware. It just takes a few seconds. And sorry, I don't have a more specific answer on what type of firmware.
No, but it's a custom firmware that you need to install. It's not MicroPython or CircuitPython or.
Correct.
We use CircuitPython.
Oh,
It's all based on CircuitPython.
So
yes.
So is there a way to actually see the CircuitPython that it's generating?
Oh. Sheree, what do you think?
There is. Boy, do we have an answer for you. So at the bottom of your screen, actually, this entire thing is supposed to be based around the fact that kids can drag code and actually understand that, like, like Ryder here does not use this to code all of his things. Like Ryder uses CircuitPython. And so to generate that code, you'll see that little tab at the bottom that says Python on there. Mm-hmm. And so as you're dragging and dropping code, it generates the code that you are writing and how text code is actually written, which is the basis of drag and drop coding, which is why it's so powerful and why a lot of different education companies are moving towards this. But this platform for Pico is really powerful, especially for kids, which is why we're sort of bringing it to life. And that's something we're really excited about. But yeah, you can see that the code starts popping up.
That's fantastic, because one of my pet peeves as a parent teaching my son how to program, and he's 9 now, is like, I don't want him getting stuck with the training wheels where he can't advance to doing the actual coding. So so it's great when you have something that's going to easily transition you from using the blocks to using the text code. And it's great that this actually shows you what it's creating.
Yeah, and we can. It also, one of my favorite tools on here is this digital view, which gives you a dynamic view of the Pico, and it's a great method for troubleshooting. And again, we're working with young kids here that might be wiring an LED for the very first time, and so the dynamic view, as you run your code, you can actually see where electricity is getting pushed to the GPIO pins. And so using this dynamic tool, you can troubleshoot to see if your code is working correctly. And if your code is working correctly, but like, let's say you're trying to blink a light and the light's not blinking, you know that the problem is going to be in your physical hardware build. And so we're just trying to have these kids think like engineers, troubleshoot their code, troubleshoot their hardware as well. And
the pinout is better than on the actual Pico. You can actually read it.
You can see it, right?
Yeah, you can see it.
No magnifying glasses needed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One of the big challenges that I feel like kids run into when they're starting to code is actually that barrier of having the right language, the right words around these things, like being able to call those pins and to be able to know when you're turning on a pin, like what that actually means. And so what we're creating here and what I hope to see kids take away from this product is not necessarily like, you know, like a really deep understanding of how all of this works. But what I want them to understand is that these are things that are understandable, that there are ways to actually learn about the Pico, to learn about technology in a way that isn't that intimidating, where you're not like staring at those tiny pins and being like, I have no idea what they do. I don't know how to like code any of them. To actually like create the approach where kids are really enjoying it and feeling like they're accomplishing something, I think is something that at Piper we've realized is the biggest thing. When we can make a kid feel like, you know, I've got this, I did something on my screen and it changed something physically in front of me, or I did something physically and it changed something on the screen. Those are the moments that, you know, you see a kid's excitement about building technology just like go to a whole new level. And that's what Piper Make is all about, especially with the Pico. And you know, we're seeing kids start to do it, which is exciting. And especially some of the lights levels that Chris can show you. Some of those where you see an LED turn on, something as simple as like an LED turning on can just take a kid's like entire demeanor from being like, okay, cool, I'm like putting wires in, to being like, I made something light up. And that can spark a lifelong love of technology and building, which is cool.
That's what matters, right? I mean, that's why I hate it when people, you know, a lot of Raspberry Pi kits really don't help kids learn as well as they should, because they don't come with any of the parts to actually allow you to do physical computing. And physical computing is where I think children really get the thrill of like, I made this happen, I made this light up, I made this motor turn. I know from working with my son, like that's what he wants to see. Just doing things on the screen that live on the screen only is not very exciting to him, unless it's making a game. Then maybe that.
Yeah. And we really, you know, from Shree's original vision for the company, you know, we really want to build confidence in kids that they can invent technology themselves. And so we've put some tools in here where they can invent their code and share it. And so in this, we went to the main menu. We've created a new project, and we're gonna save it as Tom's Hardware. And then what we can do is download this code. And so when I download it, it creates a PNG file. And so now I can share this PNG file. If I'm in the classroom, I could put it within Google Classroom. I can email it over. And once it's received, you can actually you can import it. So now I'll go into import, and I can choose my file. And import it in. There we go. And that way, kids can create their code, they can share it with their friends, their parents, their teacher. And as soon as you upload it, then it's live within your workspace. So now you can make changes, you can run the code. So we're working on a fun project for Mad Libs. So the kids can go to a tool to do Mad Libs, and they can send it to their friends, and you know, they can input the nouns and the verbs and have fun like that. So we're trying to make this really fun and engaging while teaching, you know, the basics of coding, but not just coding in the digital world, but coding physical hardware. And so this is Piper Make.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Where can folks go to learn more about this, and what products can they get from Piper that would allow them to take advantage of it?
Sure. So they can go to playpiper.com and look for the starter kit. It can connect to our main product, which is the Piper Computer Kit. It can also connect to any computer that's out there, including Google Chromebooks. We also have an extended pack, so you get the starter kit plus 3 sensors: a temperature sensor, a color sensor, and an ultrasonic rangefinder. And we've got projects for each of those sensors too. So that takes it to the next level in terms of bringing data in. And there is a data tab on Piper Make, which we can bring in 6 different inputs into a graphical format. And so we're excited to continue to develop. We're excited to partner with Raspberry Pi Foundation on this, and Eben from the Raspberry Pi Foundation has been a big supporter of the work that we've done. So please check it out at playpiper.com. Send us a note. I'm Chris at playpiper.com, Shri at playpiper.com. We'd love to hear everyone's feedback.
Great. So what does it cost to get your Pico kit?
The starter kit sorry, you go ahead, Shri.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry. It's starting to storm here in North Carolina, which means my Wi-Fi is out. So I'm hopping around trying to find data. It's fine. But yes, the starter kit is actually it has the resistors and the wires and the lights. Everything you need to do the starter tutorials on make.playpiper.com is included in the starter kit, which you can actually get for $30. Which for kit
Hey, Shri,
is actually a really
you're breaking up a bit, Shri.
Oh, sorry.
I'll jump in here. So
Storming.
and Shri is a college student. She's finishing her MD PhD at Duke right now.
Wow.
And we're so thankful to have her supporting Piper while she's doing all of that.
Wow.
That's a pretty amazing person. So the starter kit is $30. The starter kit is $30, but most people buy a year subscription to what we call the Makers Club, and that's $20 a month, or you can buy a whole year in advance for $199. And we'll continue every month to send new accessories that go along with the Raspberry Pi Pico, and then we'll complement each of those with projects on Piper Make. So look for little LED screens, piezo buzzers, all sorts of fun stuff. So we followed if you guys haven't checked it out, go to the Raspberry Pi Foundation and check out the book they've written on the Raspberry Pi Pico. So you'll see all the projects that they've written up. We have now, or we'll come out with to support what they do in their book, and we'll keep adding more and more stuff. Apparently the Pico works really well with LED screens, and so you'll see us kind of geek out on some LED screens, and we love lights and sounds. Kids love lights and sounds, and so you'll see a lot of lights and sounds goodies coming out.
Yep, no doubt. Well, thank you guys so much. We will let you get back to what you're doing, and Shri to get out of the storm. But thank you so much for sharing this with our audience.
I hope so. Thank you for having us.
Great. Well, we hope to see you guys again soon. Have a good one. So now I wanted to talk. To Ryder, who has a really amazing project that allows you to make a grand entrance when you come in. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a project I did actually last year that I'm reviving again. And it's actually something that's really simple to get started with. And we were speaking just previously about using a Raspberry Pi with physical computing and making events happen in real life, translate to things happen in code. And this is a great project to get started with that. So I guess it's probably easier for me to demonstrate it. So I'll do that. If you look behind me, you'll notice I've got a megaphone, and I'll just turn it on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and open my door. And then I'll close it as well. And that's pretty much it. In case you're not familiar with it, that's one of the bass riffs from Seinfeld. But the way that I built the project is you can drag any MP3 file into a directory and on the Raspberry Pi, and it will just play something randomly. So whatever you want when someone enters the room, it's pretty easy. And the project works relatively easy as well. It's you can use a reed switch if you want to get fancy with it, but I don't have any reed switches, so I just use a piece of aluminum foil that shorts a GPIO pin and ground, and we can pick that up with Python and play the audio file. So really, really simple stuff.
Wow.
Nice.
So what type of Raspberry Pi do you need to run this? Can you run it on a 0, or do you need something more powerful?
You could run it on a 0, but in order for that to happen, you would need to get the audio from the HDMI, which can get a little complicated. I use a 3.5 millimeter output. So for that, you can do the Raspberry Pi 4, the 3, anything with that audio. It really doesn't need anything that powerful.
Wow, fantastic. And for those who want to know how this project works, good news, Ryder's written it up for our website. So we're going to have it live on tomshardware.com this week so that you can learn how to create a grand entrance for your house. I'm sure my son will do it, and then I'll be trying to go in his room and it'll play some kind of sound, but Seinfeld's a little before his time, so it'll probably be some kind of Minecraft sound.
Seriously, good work on that project.
Yeah,
I didn't know what you were showing off until you joined earlier today.
That's awesome. So speaking of sound, Ash, I know you designed something that uses a Pico to make some really cool sounds.
Oh yeah, I did. And also, if you hear yipping in the background, I've got a dog, so hopefully she doesn't get too excited. She probably hears me talking. So what I did was actually inspired by a project that Avram has already written about and is on Tom's Hardware. He was using a Raspberry Pi Pico to control a buzzer. You can set specific specific notes to play and pre-program songs, but I thought it would be neat to create a theremin. And instead of using the buzzer, I ended up replacing it with a spare, a spare Game Boy speaker. So the farther away my hand is, it'll change the note, and it'll change when I get closer.
Nice.
And the idea behind a theremin is the closer your hand is to the, for those who haven't heard of a theremin, it's an electronic musical instrument, and it looks like a box. You've got a metal loop coming out of one side and then a metal rod sticking out vertically from the box. And you use one hand to control how loud the sound is and the other hand to control the pitch. So this doesn't have any volume control. That would be where you get your notes. So I don't expect to put on any concerts with this anytime soon, but it uses an IR sensor. And I tried to use an ultrasonic sensor at first, but this guy, I think it uses 5 volts. Pico uses 3, and I had to use a level converter to get them to communicate. And it just wasn't as accurate as the IR sensor. So if you're going to play around, I recommend getting like an IR sensor to get the accuracy to get the notes right where you want them. So yeah, that's what I've been up to today.
That looks like a lot of fun. So we already talked about one programming language that is new, or programming method, I guess you could say, that is new for Pico, unless you found another one.
I have indeed, yes. And earlier on today, I wrote a story about the Arduino IDE now being available for Raspberry Pi Pico. It's unofficial, it's a community project. Arduino are working on an Arduino core officially for the Arduino IDE, so we can use the Pico. But right now, the community is, well, they've got it done, ready to go. So I've been messing around, which is a code word for testing, to see if I can get it to work. And I have on the MakePlayPico, which we did a review of a couple of weeks ago, which is swamped out because of the light. There we go. I'll do that YouTuber trick. We put your hand behind it. That works. And right now, just GPIO 25 is lighting up on the board. And if I just share my screen, and here we go. I think Avram needs to okay that. Thank you. There we go. You can see me on the screen. It's a bonus. You can see it's just the very simple blink sketch that runs on every Arduino Uno that we always test our boards with. It's the first thing we do to make sure that the code works and the hardware works. And I've got it running just to demonstrate right now that this MakePlayPico is working. It's great, but it's boring. So I thought I need to do something a bit more interesting. So I wrote this little script, and this is really it's specific for MakePlayPico because it's got LEDs built into the board, ready to go. With no resistor needed, no wires needed. I can just make them light up straight away. So I've written this script, which will really just use a for loop to set all 28 GPIO pins that have got an LED attached on the MakePlayPico to outputs. And then it uses in a loop another for loop to say, right, go through every single GPIO pin, turn them on with a delay of 20 milliseconds, then go through that same loop again, but go in reverse from 28 to 0, and turn them all off with a delay of 20 milliseconds. And I'm going to flash this onto the board now. Well, first I'll just check that it all works. Always handy. Yep, that works. And right now it's compiling the code and it's going to upload it directly to the Pico. Now this is Arduino IDE. So it's resetting the board, it's flashing the UF2 file straight onto it. And about 4 or 5 seconds, here we go, it's on now. You can see that all those LEDs are going backwards and forwards. And this is totally in the Arduino IDE. So I'm going to be writing a tutorial on this because the steps to make it work, they are involved. But I've worked out the right way to do it so it works every time. And that's going to be on Tom's Hardware this week.
That's very cool, Les.
Thank you.
So I have a question for Ryder. Would you program a Pico with Arduino IDE?
Well, actually, I had no experience with the Pico, so I'm not quite sure how it differs from a regular Raspberry Pi.
Oh, well.
It differs.
We'll have to make sure you get one. It's a microcontroller for the.
Okay.
So you're going to program it. No operating system. Although someone has come up with a mini Linux for it, but it's not supposed to be. I mean, you program it in MicroPython, CircuitPython, or the new block, or now Arduino IDE, or PiperMake, or C, and you use it to control lights, motors, and sensors. And hey, it has depending on whether you get this or you get one of the third-party boards, it has either 3 or 4 ADC channels, which the regular Raspberry Pi doesn't have. So,
and it's got 16 pulse width modulation channels, and it's only $4. So if you were going to get something equivalent from Arduino, you might want to check out the Pico first.
I think I'm kind of curious, Les. Why do you think someone would want to use the Arduino IDE instead of programming this in Micro or CircuitPython?
I think right now it's still early days for this way of doing it. When the official IDE comes out, the Arduino core comes out, we're going to see official Arduino support. Libraries that work with the Arduino IDE will most likely work with the Pico as well because they're cross-compatible. We'll have access to a C, C++ environment, which is a lot faster than CircuitPython or MicroPython. So people can do more low-level work on the board. So they'll get more power out of it, and it'll be easy to use. Because right now, the C, C++ SDK has great documentation, but it is impenetrable for the average user to.
Oh, yeah, no question. I set it up the other day. It was a real pain in the butt. I really did not like having to. I know a lot of folks really did not like dealing with Visual Studio, and then I had to launch Visual Studio at the developer command prompt to get it to work. What a pain. So yeah, that definitely will save people time. Speaking of things that save people time, we have one more thing I wanted to show. Let me see if I can just share this window. Application window. Okay. So this is probably familiar to everybody. This is the Raspberry Pi Imager, but the new version of this has some secret new features. Why do I say secret? Because you won't get them unless you hit Control-Shift-X, which I guess on a Mac would be Option-Shift-X. Is that right? So here you have it, and if you hit Control Shift X, you have the ability to, either for this time or always, change some options. You can set the host name. This is something you could not easily do before you burnt a card. And now, if you don't want your Pi to be named Raspberry Pi right out of the box, which I will use this all the time because I have a lot of different Pis and I do not want them. And every time I set one up, I have to go in and change the host name. Well, here I can enable it. Normally, to enable SSH, what you would have to do is drag and drop, is create a little text file called SSH and put it in the root. You don't have to do that, and you can actually change your password for the Pi user right here. You can configure normally to get Wi-Fi running for a headless setup, which is how I always set up my Pis, and don't need a keyboard or mouse or monitor. Normally, you would have to, create a WPA supplicant file, which can be kind of annoying. I keep one in my documents folder that I can just copy every time. Here we go. I can just click this, and it even has filled in automatically the SSID that I'm on right now on my home network. So, and just make sure you pick your country, right? Because if you don't do it, so then you have a couple other settings, but that's about the extent of it. But that's going to save people a lot of time, and that is the latest version of the Raspberry Pi Imager. So really cool.
Those are some good changes.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted that, and last time I looked this up, you'd have to go to either Pi Bakery or something to use the Pi Bakery tool to make something which puts the host name on it, or you have to burn the card and then in Linux or something that can read Linux, open the Etsy hosts file to change it. So just changing the host file and enabling Wi-Fi and SSH is great. The only thing I wish that they would add is to enable VNC out of the box instead of just enabling SSH. But that's really impressive. Well, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Thank our guests, Ryder Damen and Chris and Shri from Piper Learning. As always, we are on at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and will it be 6:30 or 7:30 p.m. GMT next week?
7:30. The clocks go forward in the UK this Sunday.
Yes. So we've had a temporary, Yes, James says he saw Ash cringe when he said he keeps. Well, I won't do that anymore. I won't have to do it. Now that we have this. So anyhow, we will see everyone next week. Bye, everyone.
Ryder, use your door to see us out.
Yes, I can do that.
Door. Hey.
Thank you.
Hang on.